In 1932, after uniting his dominions into what he named the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ibn Saud ascended the throne and declared Riyadh his capital. But his newborn state was broke. The Western world was in the depths of the Great Depression, and Arabia's traditional revenue from pilgrims traveling to Mecca had sharply declined. That same year, a breakthrough occurred just offshore in neighboring Bahrain. Oil was struck in 1932, proving that the barren Gulf might hide black gold beneath its sands. For a Saudi kingdom desperate for cash, this was electrifying. Inspired by Bahrain's success, Ibn Saud welcomed foreign geologists and ramped up exploration. The search soon focused on a promising patch of ground called Dammam No. 7. For nearly 3 years, drillers punched deeper and deeper with nothing to show for it. The well earned the nickname the Stubborn One. Then, on March 3, 1938, it finally gushed oil. That dusty land turned out to be the home of the world's largest proven oil reserve fields like Ghawar and Safaniya that could outproduce entire nations. In just a few decades, Saudi Arabia's GDP skyrocketed. For Saudi Arabia, oil has been both a blessing and a trap. In the 2000s, prices soared to record highs. In 2008, the price per barrel topped $147, ushering the kingdom into a golden era. GDP nearly tripled in less than a decade. Riyadh filled with luxury hotels and international consultants, and the monarchy's grip looked unshakable. Money seemed endless, effortless, until the inevitable crash came. Prices plunged to the 40s within months, reminding everyone that riding the oil roller coaster was no way to guarantee stability. This volatility has defined the past 2 decades. The 2014 crisis triggered a collapse, and by early 2016, Brent had fallen to around $27 a barrel. That was well below the levels Saudi Arabia needed to balance its budget. Between 2016 and 2020, prices averaged just over $50, and even with recovery, the pattern has been the same. Unpredictable swings that make long-term planning nearly impossible. Building an economy on oil in the 21st century is like building a house on shifting sand. The real problem is that Saudi Arabia is structurally dependent on it. Oil accounts for about 40% of their real GDP, 70% of exports, and roughly 75% of government revenue. With no income tax and a workforce where 1/3 are foreign contractors and over half of Saudis hold government jobs, the system relies entirely on oil rents trickling down from the top. And yet, Saudi oil is uniquely powerful because of its costs. In 2014, lifting crude from Ghawar averaged just $7 a barrel. Compare that to $40 or more for US shale. Even after paying wages, covering logistics, and accounting for royalties, Saudi Arabia still generates massive surpluses that are funneled into financing mega projects or offsetting budget deficits. But this paradox defines the kingdom. Cheap oil ensures massive income, yet unstable markets ensure massive risk. As the past decade proved, Saudi Arabia's economic strength is tied to the one resource whose price it cannot control. Within the Saudi royal family, some had long recognized the danger of betting everything on oil. The wealth was immense, but it came with clear risks. Sharp price drops could still disrupt the kingdom's finances. Thanks to its vast reserves, Saudi Arabia could weather downturns longer than most, yet over-reliance on oil made reform more of a necessity than a choice. That turning point came in 2017, in a scene straight out of palace drama. Mohammed bin Nayef, the crown prince at the time, was summoned to Mecca for what he believed was a routine meeting with King Salman. Instead, he found himself isolated in a side chamber, his phone confiscated, his guards dismissed. After hours of pressure, the demand was made: step aside. By sunrise, his cousin Mohammed bin Salman, just 31 years old, was the new crown prince. But MBS wasn't starting from scratch. As deputy crown prince and defense minister, he had already built a reputation as the power behind the throne, shaping policy and centralizing influence. Officially, King Salman remained on top, but in practice, decision-making now flowed through his son. By his early 30s, MBS had become the de facto ruler of the kingdom. Then came his most dramatic move: the Ritz-Carlton Purge. In November 2017, nearly 200 princes, ministers, and business elites were detained in what was normally a luxury hotel. Overnight, the chandeliers and marble halls became a gilded holding cell. The terms were blunt: surrender vast sums or stay put. By the end, more than $100 billion was reportedly recovered. To some, it was a bold strike against corruption. To others, a very expensive power play. With power consolidated, MBS unveiled Vision 2030, a blueprint to diversify the economy, attract foreign investment, and reduce the kingdom's oil addiction. The message was clear: Saudi Arabia had to reinvent itself, and under MBS, it was going to try, even if the path looked as audacious as it did uncertain. For most of modern history, Saudi Arabia was a closed society, defined by strict religious codes, shuttered cinemas, and a total ban on tourism. Shops stopped 5 times a day for prayer, women couldn't drive, and the religious police roamed the streets enforcing dress codes. To outsiders, it hardly looked like the kind of place you'd book for a vacation, let alone a safe bet for Western investors. That image began to shift with the rise of MBS. In 2018, women were allowed to drive for the first time. Travel restrictions eased, and movie theaters reopened after a 30-year ban. The power of the religious police were scaled back, and in 2019, the kingdom launched its first ever tourist visa program, opening the doors to visitors from more than 40 countries. For a country that had previously admitted almost exclusively pilgrims, this was a radical shift. The logic was clear. Other resource-dependent economies, from Dubai to Qatar, had long pursued diversification by building up their tourism industries. If Saudi Arabia wanted to reduce its oil addiction, it needed not just airports and hotels, but also a rebrand, one that suggested openness, entertainment, and even moderate Islam. Saudi Arabia has gone all in on giga projects that look more like science fiction than city planning. There's the Jeddah Tower, aiming to surpass 1 kilometer in height and become the tallest building in the world. The Line, a 170-kilometer-long mirrored city slicing through the desert, pitched as car-free, emission-free, and home to 9 million people. The Cube, a 400-meter-high mega-block in Riyadh, designed to hold a self-contained futuristic city. And Qiddiya, the entertainment capital in the making, offering theme parks, racetracks, and esports arenas. On paper, these are symbols of Vision 2030, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's blueprint for economic diversification. But progress isn't measured only in concrete poured, it's measured in data. Private sector share of GDP, 40% in 2016, goal of 65% by 2030. Today, it stands at just 42.7%. Foreign direct investment, 1.3% of GDP in 2016, with a target of 5.7%. As of 2024, it stands at about 1.27%. Non-oil exports, 16% in 2016, target 50%. Now at 22.4%, it is still considered progress, but well off track. Unemployment stood at 11.6% in 2016, with a target of 7%. By 2024, it had fallen to 7.1%, almost hitting the stated goal. We've seen improvements in certain sectors, but overall, the numbers highlight both the ambition and the gap between aspiration and reality. But the mega projects themselves aren't free from problems. Take The Line. What started as a $500 billion vision has ballooned into an eye-watering $8.8 trillion estimate. That's not just over budget, that's an entirely different universe of spending. And it raises serious doubts about whether the project can ever be realized. Back in 2021, the promise was bold: a 170-kilometer linear city built by 2030. Today, the scale of ambition has shrunk to just 2.4 kilometers by that same deadline. Critics point out that the UAE diversified first with finance, trade, and logistics before unveiling icons like the Burj Khalifa. Saudi Arabia seems to be trying the reverse, building icons first and hoping the diversification follows. The risk is obvious. Without sustained private sector growth and real foreign investment, the towers and cubes could become glittering shells rather than engines of prosperity. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, or PIF, now manages over $700 billion, edging towards $1 trillion. No longer just a vault for oil rents, it's Mohammed bin Salman's primary tool to push the kingdom beyond oil and into Vision 2030. The portfolio is almost absurdly diverse, with investments in Uber, Nintendo, luxury EV startups, airlines, new airports, and real estate megaprojects. If it sounds scattershot, that's because it is. The PIF is betting on anything that might one day make Made in Saudi Arabia mean more than just petrochemicals. But nowhere is this spending spree more visible than in sports. Billions of oil dollars have found their way into global stadiums, pitches, and racetracks. The PIF bought Newcastle United, owns 4 clubs in the Saudi Pro League, and controlled LIV Golf, which merged with the PGA to international uproar. Aramco, the largest oil company in Saudi Arabia, reported a staggering $535 billion in revenue in 2022. Beyond pumping crude, it has become a headline sponsor, partnering with the International Cricket Council, Formula One, and even women's golf tournaments. It's not subtle. Saudi Arabia wants its name plastered across scoreboards from London to Shanghai. Football, though, is the crown jewel. In late 2022, Cristiano Ronaldo signed a record-shattering contract worth around $200 million a year to play for Al Nassr. That deal wasn't about one player. It was about putting the Saudi League on the global map. Soon, other European stars followed, and players like Neymar and Benzema were lured by salaries many times higher than those in the West. Formula One tells a similar story. Since 2021, Jeddah has hosted a Grand Prix under Aramco sponsorship, turning the Red Sea Corniche into a showcase of speed and spectacle. Add in mega festivals like Middle Beast, where DJs like David Guetta and Tiesto headline desert raves, and you start to see the outline. A kingdom trying to market itself not as austere, but as a hub of entertainment and global sport. The bigger picture is branding. For decades, Saudi Arabia's international image was oil wealth and human rights controversies. Today, the plan is different. Ski resorts, football icons, Formula One night races, and music festivals designed to project a cool, investable Saudi Arabia. It may not erase the politics, but if sport and spectacle can add even 1 or 2% to their GDP while softening the country's global reputation, that's a gamble MBS seems more than willing to make. For decades, Saudi Arabia operated under an unspoken social contract. Citizens would support the monarchy politically, and in return, the state would shower them with benefits such as free healthcare, subsidized fuel, generous housing programs, and above all, no personal income tax. Oil rents financed the deal, turning loyalty into something close to a paycheck. The centerpiece of this system was government employment. Nearly half of working Saudis are on the state payroll, earning an average of 11 to 12,000 riyals per month, which is about $3,000 for roughly a 7-hour workday and with extensive benefits. By comparison, the private sector pays 7 to 8,000 riyals, $2,000 for a 9-hour workday, offers fewer protections, and forces Saudis to compete with low-cost foreign labor. The result is clear. Citizens prefer public jobs, leaving the private sector struggling to attract talent. But that private sector isn't truly private either. Many firms survive by chasing government contracts or PIF-financed megaprojects. Without the steady flow of oil money, much of it would collapse. Which brings us to the most delicate issue, taxation. In 2018, for the first time in Saudi history, citizens were asked to contribute through a 5% VAT, later raised to 15%, along with excise tax on tobacco, soft drinks, and fuel. The revenue was real but insufficient, and the idea of broader taxation remains politically explosive. That's the bind. Saudis have grown used to oil-funded bonuses, comfortable jobs, cheap energy, and stipends. But if the kingdom wants to escape dependence on crude, these perks must eventually be reconsidered. Strip them away too quickly, though, and the monarchy risks undermining its own legitimacy. For now, hundreds of billions are being poured into new industries and futuristic projects, an attempt not only to diversify the economy, but also to make Saudi Arabia look more attractive to tourists and to rebrand the kingdom as a magnet for foreign investment. Maybe time will prove these bets wise. Or maybe Saudi Arabia is chasing a future that its own social contract simply won't allow.